Hi, class. Um, when doing this journal entry, the first thing that stuck out to me was the Minnow 1990 referred to this thing called the dilemma of difference, right? So it's the dilemma of whether creating special structures for people perceived as different helps or hinders them. On one hand, the obvious remedy to exclusion would seem to be explicit recognition and provision of services for that group. On another hand, the designation of special status can increase stigma and results in controlling rather than supportive social measures. Um, I see that a lot um, in my dealings this past year. I taught I taught first grade, and so there was a lot of debate on whether or not to send my children with IEPs to the special education classroom or not. So here's the dilemma that we face. Their least restrictive environment technically was the classroom. On paper, their least restrictive environment was the classroom. However, according to the Council for Exceptional Children, professional ethical principle number one is maintaining challenging expectations for individuals with exceptionalities to develop the highest possible learning outcomes and quality of life potential in ways that respect their dignity, culture, language, and background. The issue or the dilemma that I faced was that a lot of times keeping children in the classroom, um, despite them having a an IEP, really didn't preserve their dignity, you know. And I say that because I was treating them like, I guess, as quote unquote normal as possible, and yet they were exhibiting the behaviors that were consistent with their disabilities. And me as a teacher with no paras and no support would end up having to stop my class to then take care of them. And it calls into question what's least restrictive and what are the caveats for least restrictive, because I'm sitting in this room, and yes, technically they can stay in this room, but if they're in this room and they are screaming and crying and have no support, there definitely should be some support available for them. I believe they deserve that, and I don't think that's going against least restrictive environment to put a plan like that in place for them. But you have situations where a student clearly needs help and the administration is so intent on their progress and challenging them rigorously that it's like they kind of let the very real reality of the child's disability go over their head. And so what I um what I do to create challenging environments that take into account my children's dignity and culture is that I make the effort to create the spaces that administration says they can't have. So I have a calm section in my classroom. And even though administration says they should be in LRE, they don't need that calm section, I have to think harder and think beyond what's on the paper if I am going to help my student. And I think a lot of people or teachers are in the same boat, in that we oftentimes have to make decisions and changes on the fly in order to preserve the dignity and the integrity of the work that we're doing with our students. Still, that is a very big dilemma of mine. Um, do I call out their differences and do something about them, or do I pretend like everything is fine and then I can't uphold the number one ethical principle? Yeah. Thank you all for listening. Have a good night.